What is up, everyone? Happy Monday. Hope you all had a great weekend and welcome into the TDR Traded Black podcast. I am your host, sdales. Hope you're enjoying this Monday. Saw some red again today. Things are a little slow right now in the market. We need news, but here we are every day pumping out content to see what we're going to hear next. Top of the line here today with the podcast, we're going to talk about a new market potentially in North Carolina related to cannabis as well. Bitcoin. Could we see all-time highs at some point this week? But most importantly, today's podcast as to why you want to listen and watch. Aaron Miles, Chief Investment Officer of Verano, joins us. He talks about their latest earnings and what he's hearing based on the developments in the state of Florida. And as well, it's MSO Monday, and we got Dan Ahrens back on. So let's get right into the podcast. Welcome in, TDR co-host Anthony Varell. Good to see you. Happy Monday.
How's it going?
You had some fun at the, what tournament was that? PGA tournament over the
weekend?
It
was Cognizant Classic up in Palm Beach. Used to be the Honda Classic. Followed Rory around for a couple holes and basically hit the hospitality suite for the rest of the
Actually, that was fun.
Rest of the day. Yeah, it was good.
I see a little smirk, so we'll just leave the festivities that was to went on at the actual golf course itself. But yeah, that's a tough course. Let's welcome in Guap. Good, happy Monday, Guap. Good to see you. Hope you had a good weekend as well. Like the hat, brother.
Gentlemen, yes, happy to report some good news out of my home state of North Carolina. So I'm rocking the NC hat today.
I did. Let's actually jump into that because I did top line that at the top of the podcast. So welcome in, everybody. This is segment number 1, Into the Wire, outline the biggest headlines in cannabis and crypto today. We welcome you in here on a Monday. So it is, for the most part, a slower day on the news front. But as you said, Guap, always a good time to discuss new markets that enter into the space as we shift to your state, your home state, North Carolina. One of the few states remaining that has not passed medical or recreational cannabis. However, that could change. So what's the latest that's going on within your state?
Yeah, so the list that of states that have not passed medical cannabis: Alabama, Idaho, Nebraska, North Carolina, and South Carolina, Tennessee, and Wyoming. So there's still a few holdouts left, but I'm pleased to report that North Carolina is opening its first legal recreational cannabis dispensary. It's going to be located 40 miles west of Asheville on the Cherokee Reservation. So I'm going to have to make a trip out there and film that with our producer, Mitch. I think it's going to be kind of a wild experience to go out to the res and check it out.
That does sound
it's noteworthy because it's the first one, and hopefully it causes some headlines and some pressure on the state government here to do the right thing. They've had multiple fits and starts. They've gotten me excited and let me down a bunch of times, and haven't quite figured out what they're going to do with medical cannabis here just yet.
Christopher Ratty writes, we all forgot Georgia from that list. Is Georgia? They had
True Leaves in Georgia.
Georgia
has a medical. Yeah, Georgia has a medical program.
Yeah. So we got, say that again, Alabama 1, Idaho, Nebraska, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Wyoming. So 7 states. We talk about, when we're going to get announcements, but here we are in 2024, and you look at it that way, there's only 7 states remaining that have not legalized either medical or recreational. Sign of the times, which is positive overall for the industry, right?
Yeah, big net positive. Train's left the station.
Train has definitely left the station.
Cat's out of the bag, genie's out of the bottle, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. What's the population in North Carolina? We know the top?
I'd have to Google that one. Well,
be curious to see in due time what size of market that would be. But you would think after today's announcement,
somewhere probably between 6 and 8 million people.
Okay,
10.55 million people in North Carolina.
Did you say 10?
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
That's a decent size market.
State. It's a real decent size market.
Yeah. Well, be watching that closely. Always a good time to talk about a new market potentially coming to market. So anyway, thanks for the update. Let's now head down to headline number 2. Getting out of cannabis, let's talk about maybe some more positive news when it comes to investors in Bitcoin, which is knocking on all-time highs, Anthony. This continues to rip. Do you think we see an all-time high at some point this week?
Yeah, I think the all-time high probably prints tonight or tomorrow morning
when
Asia wakes up. Yeah, it's the ETFs are doing exactly what we thought they were doing. They're creating distortion in the supply and demand metrics of Bitcoin. They're gobbling it up. They're holding it. The ETFs are getting massive inflows. Everything else in crypto is cranking with it. You've got meme coins that I won't buy on principle because they're pretty much vaporware, but they're mooning billions of dollars worth of market cap. Bitcoin ordinals, which are essentially NFTs on the Bitcoin blockchain that are inscriptions, those are cranking right now. Everything crypto is going gangbusters. And I think Bitcoin's probably got a ways to go going into the halving. And then you've got Ethereum and Solana that'll probably catch up right with it in terms of catching up to the trade.
I actually was on Twitter earlier today and I saw a poll. Somebody asked if you were to decide between gold or Bitcoin here in 2024. And again, this is not investment advice. Who would you decide on or pick if you had to choose one? Anthony,
I buy both. I'm allocated to both. I'm allocated to both. I mean, I'm talking my book. I own physical gold. I've got physical silver literally on my desk that sits here every day. I own Bitcoin as well. There's nothing better than gold as far as I'm concerned. You could take an ounce of gold. It's worth exactly the same amount in US, China, abroad. Bitcoin's just as good. Gold I can actually hold in my hand and there's no digital risk. It's sound. They're both sound money, or sound stores of value. But yeah, I own both and I'll always own both.
Yeah. I think the big question is like, what is the upside still here? Like, we're not even we're barely 2 months into this year. And what was, if I remember, sir, what's that? Yeah, I know, but I'm just looking at 60 days ago, like where Bitcoin was trading and how much it's grown in the first 60 days. You're right.
It's a supply and demand. Like OTC desks right now don't even have Bitcoin to sell you. The supply and demand economics are completely distorted, and then the favor number goes up. I think the number is still going to keep going up for some time now.
Cool. All right, that concludes Into the Wire, segment 1, headlining the biggest headlines in cannabis and I was going to say psychedelics, but crypto. A little bit of slower day, but we wanted to fill up our podcast today with guests. So let's now segue into segment number 2 and welcome in the Chief Investment Officer of Verano Holdings, which trades on Cboe Canada. Aaron Miles back to the podcast. And good to see you, sir. And first, before we get into earnings, how are you feeling at halftime being a Lions fan against the Niners? Like that was I know you and I were going back and forth. We were so close, buddy. We were so close.
On mute. I want to hear how angry
he's on mute. He's on mute. All good. All good.
Look, I was being polite, staying on mute. You know, I wasn't expecting a hard first question here. I thought I'd get a softball, but listen, you're up 14 and you go for it. I mean, you kick the field goal in that instance. But listen, it's the same way we play in cannabis. Like, stick to what works, and sometimes you have to be a little risky. And I think Campbell got him there with some very tough decisions. So he had to not play it safe there. But listen, they were there. I mean, my God, it's a sweet taste of victory even to be considered one of the top teams in the league.
Yeah, it's for investors, I guess cannabis stocks, if they were a head coach in football, they'd be Dan Campbell, wouldn't they?
yeah. Biting kneecaps and drinking too venti, God knows how much caffeine in his coffees, but we're there. So
yeah. Well, good to see you again. We'll top line it. Like you and a few of the other big MSOs reported your latest earnings last week. Trulieve, GTI, yourselves. There were some investors that I think for the most part it was positive. I think some investors were hoping for maybe a little bit stronger growth, but you can't please everyone. But if you had to, I guess, describe your latest earnings in one word, what would it be?
I think strong is the word, right? I mean, I think the three companies that have come out so far have really set the tone to really navigate the industry really successfully, and it's funny, you saw a big sell-off, when we announced our earnings on really low volume. And, we put up, 938 million, in revenue, 7% up year over year, 73 million on the free cash flow line. And we announced, $175 million of cash on the balance sheet, which we're going to deploy to really strengthen the balance sheet and start to really take down debt. We paid, made about $150 million in tax payments. And, so people who say, hey, we want it a little bit stronger, we're like, listen, we're doing everything we can with what's being afforded to us. Like Illinois is now starting to get a few dispensaries open, 177, and you're starting to see some momentum in New Jersey. But a big thing that I don't think people really pay attention to is the normalization of markets, right? So we're guiding down in Q1, year over year, 5 to 7% down year over year. But what's happening is you're starting to see some normalization in New Jersey, right? Like when that program first turned on, there was 19 dispensaries in the state. and there's 90 now. So that's more of a wholesale opportunity for us. But in reality, you're starting to see some normalization. So overall, I think the quarter was extremely strong. I think it really highlighted the strength of Verano and the other top operators in the space. But listen, we've said this from day one. We don't run this business, and this isn't what you're implying, based off stock price and stock movement. We run this based off of pure fundamentals, and sooner or later you'll get money in that can appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's undeniable that the numbers were strong. And again, thank you for actually breaking out the markets that you guys are in on the earnings from a retail and a wholesale perspective. And I mean, I guess I wanted to kind of start with Florida. I know Florida was up quarter over quarter. I know that they announced that you guys announced that you're part of the Medical Marijuana Trade Association in Florida. I guess, can you kind of walk me through that from like a top line perspective, like what the initiatives are? Is it kind of policy driven? Is it patient focused? Are you kind of starting to fortify the presence from like a grassroots initiative going into adult use? Like kind of like walk me through that, what that's going to be leveraged for.
Yeah, I would say, when you saw DeSantis, and we weren't waiting for him to make a comment, but when you saw DeSantis start to comment on cannabis, and let's talk about this as a whole, and I'll come back to Florida, you're starting to see this, really start to be accepted at a much higher level. Like Nikki Haley's talking about it, DeSantis is talking about it, and you're seeing multiple states start to roll out programs. When we start to see that kind of momentum, we start to get more involved in the state. So you are right. I mean, it's really kind of a soup to nuts type of approach where it's really helping get the adult use on the ballot. It's helping to get, different initiatives and different patients into the program. And it's also starting to, if you look at like the telemedicine being pulled back on in Florida, starting to get more programs up and running that can be more conducive to allowing the program to thrive. So it's really kind of an all of the above type of approach when it comes to that association.
Okay. And then with that, I know you mentioned the cash and deploying that cash to create value. I mean, do you see that as being deployed in the form of like CapEx to fortify the markets that you're in, M&A opportunities? Have you, Verano, ever, I guess, looked at anything abroad? Or, I mean, sticking to the U.S. strategy? I know it's a multi-pronged question, but like sticking to the U.S. strategy as it stands today?
Our focus is always on the home turf. When it comes to cash, it's we have multiple avenues that, using football as a reference. I mean, we run an option offense, right? And so whatever the defense is giving us, we take it. And so if you look at Florida, for instance, if this starts, if it slips through on April 1 and, we start to see, momentum towards adult use, then absolutely we're going to invest in that market. We did $222 million last year alone in Florida. I mean, you start to think about what that could be like for a rec market for a company like ours with massive cultivation and 74 dispensaries going to what? I mean, so there's a lot of incentive behind putting your CapEx dollars there. But for right now, it's fortifying the balance sheet. We have $350 million term loan. We have optionality on that first 100 with a 1% prepayment penalty. So we announced that in April, we're going to pay down the first 50 and then kind of, with a pathway to, paying down the rest. If something opens up, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, I mean, that's very accretive. So you can imagine we would ship dollars. But if everything calms down and we get the balance sheet fortified, then listen, we start to look at M&A. You start to look at, states like a North Carolina, right? Coming online and or like states that we're not in. But international, we haven't done anything there. But I'd be remiss to say, like, I wouldn't be doing my job if we weren't paying attention to what's going on, right? Yeah. Germany legalized, they're making that program more conducive. So it's like even, that association down in Florida, like we're trying to get involved with as many organizations as we can, because there's a lot of opportunity out there, domestically and internationally, but there's only so many dollars in your bank account.
Yeah, but I hear you. Go out, far away, bud.
Yeah. So speaking of Florida, mandatory tax strategy question here. Obviously, they received a large tax refund from the IRS. It's thought this was due to their heavy participation in the medical market in Florida. As you mentioned, you're a top operator in Florida as well. Do you anticipate utilizing a similar strategy, or what are your general thoughts on that? Because it kind of took a few people by surprise here.
Yeah, I think the actual cash in the bank account took a few people by surprise. I mean, that kind of strategy was marketed years ago, and it's something that we look at. And when you think about bandwidth and dollars spent, you want to make sure that you have a high likelihood of getting that. And now that you've seen some success there, I mean, I would assume, we would definitely take a stronger look at that. We'd be remiss not to. But I mean, 280E alone, I mean, we talked about this on our call, cost us $80+ million. It's absolutely insane when you think about, like, look at the numbers we put up. If we were a private company, let's look at it from a different perspective, because we're kind of a we're kind of a pseudo private company. Like if we were a private company, our investors would be jumping up and down right now with happiness, right? And so you think about putting up $73 million of free cash flow and 32% margins on the year, and that actually had a big inventory impact, which probably 400 to 500 basis points. But think about 80 million just dropping to your bottom line. This is just an unfair tax structure. And so if there's any wiggle room or any opportunity to kind of push back on that, we would fully look into that.
Yep. And then talking through the numbers, I know that you guys actually, I'm pretty sure you guided up the low end of the EBITDA range for 2024. Do you expect, and then guided down overall for Q1, do you expect that normalization to kind of subside and start to see a trend to the upside as we get later into the year, and some of those markets, I guess, start to trend up with the compression and other things that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think the big thing that we pointed out is, retail plays about a 68% percentage of our portfolio. That's a large part, right? So when you're 3 of 19 dispensaries in New Jersey, you're absolutely crushing it, and now you have to become more of a wholesale player. And so we took a step back in Jersey on our cultivation facility. It's a state-of-the-art facility. We're going to bring more rooms back online to take advantage of those 90 doors. So I think one thing that you'll see, Anthony, is that we're probably going to start to see a little bit of a balancing between retail and wholesale, right? Because as more doors open, and we have over 1 million square feet of cultivation, so and truly cultivation capacity that we would put up against anybody, right? And it's all indoor, it's all high quality. We've always operated in the premium sector, and so there's a lot of new customers going into to some new doors that would love to get some Verano product in their hands. So I think that's fair.
Yep. And then speaking of the premium and of the brands, I mean, I know some of your competitors in Florida, they're building portfolios via licensing agreements and bringing some of the prominent brands that we see in the West Coast into the state. I mean, I understand that Move is predominantly, I think it is all Verano house brands. Is that a strategy that you think you'll maintain going into adult use, or do you see kind of broadening out that portfolio?
I would say that is that's fair, and but for now, our products sell and we get higher margins. Have a licensing agreement. I mean, Move alone was up 90 basis points in the year. Florida in the quarter was up 11% sequentially. So people are buying the product, and it's really not a crazy concept to say if you just produce a really high quality product that's consistent and available, buy it. And so if we start to miss out, right, if there's an idea of some type of branding that isn't in our portfolio that we're missing sales on, that we would look at that. But in reality, a lot of times it cannibalizes your portfolio, especially at this stage. And especially with a medical program and really not, being able to market broadly. So I would say right now, we're very happy with, the margin profile that we're able to put up, but it's not out of the question. I mean, we truly do evaluate everything.
Hence the reason at 32% margins, right?
That is correct. And that, again, was with a massive inventory impact. We built it up in the year. You build it up in Q3 ahead of Q4, and then you pull back and you put some flower to oil extraction, which also has an inventory impact. So, we actually said this on the call too. Our CFO answered the question. Gross profit was 59 to 60%, and it would have been 64 to 65 if that inventory hadn't had the impact it did on the numbers. So again, tops to the space with the margin impact, and even stronger if you actually account for that inventory.
What's your numbers again? What was it that you shared for Florida?
So Florida was 222 million, in what was that for the full year, and 50 was around 60 million in Q4, which is up 11% sequentially. We had a very, very historically strong fourth quarter, and that's kind of part of what you see is then you're going to be seasonally down in Q1. But this is all part of it. You're seeing markets normalize. You're seeing trends start to really play out. And I think this is what's really going to start to help these investors is to understand when they start to build their models, if there's ups and downs, what that seasonality looks like. And that's something that, listen, I grew up, working with the buy side, and I know what they're looking for. And that was part of that whole transparency is, we're auditioning for new dollars here. And we want to make sure that we make their jobs as easy as possible for when those new dollars potentially come in, they know who they want to invest in.
Market size right now, Florida is $2 billion, right, Anthony?
Roughly.
$2 billion? Yeah. So you're talking about tripling that if we get adult use, and we'll see whether or not it's on the ballot in the next 30 days. But
think about all the snowbirds can't really. I mean, they're not really buying a lot of product down there, and so and then like the tourists and you start to think about coming into Daytona Beach for a week. It's like, there's a lot of missed dollars there because they've made it really hard to get a med card. It used to be just, be in Florida for a week, and now it's a lot tougher. And so just easing some of those restrictions could just have a massive impact. And then again, we could go down the rabbit hole 280E, but there's just you look at an industry and everyone thinks it's doom and gloom because it is cannabis. We wake up every day and, you get your black eye and you go to work. But in reality, it's you think about states are decoupling 280E. You see the HHS, announcement. You see the DEA pending.
I know we talk about this a lot.
But it's like, and then you see the DEA, like, you see like the numbers that we're putting up as an industry, like we're profitable businesses now. This isn't like a concept anymore. And so you see all of these big catalysts that are in front of us, and you're going, I know. So we put up these numbers and we trade down 10% on earnings day. So just
tell me about it. We talk about this a lot, but the catalyst moments, like you just said, like you can't make this stuff up. But like you said, if you were a private company, investors would be knocking their heads off the ceilings because they'd be so excited. But that's just the way everything's structured right now. But man, rescheduling and changes the whole tax landscape. Wow, you can understand why there's a lot of people watching this closely.
Yeah. Credit cards.
One thing I wanted to bring up too, I was on, it's been 5 months now since you listed on SIBO.
October. Yeah. Don't make me do the math in my head. It's October. So
time flies. Well, one of the main reasons was access to institutional capital. You seeing momentum? You happy with the listing on the new exchange? And are you seeing momentum build towards that maybe you wouldn't have if you were still listed on the CSE?
Yeah, it's been a great move for us. The team at SIBO is phenomenal. And, first and foremost, we have senior exchange, status. So again, if things move quickly and we have the potential to uplist, that SIBO US listing is just waiting. Right. And so that's first and foremost. But, our volume is trending in the right direction. We're starting to get a bigger percentage of the top 5 MSOs from a volume perspective. We are having a lot of conversations, right? And this is where I think people get a little bit frustrated, but in reality, it takes time to get money in. When I was at a Fortune 50 company, I would have to work on like a T row for like 3 years, and you're like, we're like, it was like I was at CME Group. It was the mecca of futures and derivatives. It was like, it's a no-brainer. No one else can, it's vertically integrated. Nobody can take your market share. And it still took 3 years. And so we're having those conversations where we're getting people up to speed. It's still really small and infant at this stage, but there's new names that are popping up that have definitely been associated with that listing.
Well,
I have one more question go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. So speaking of auditioning for institutions, we already gave you some props about breaking things down by state. I'd love to hear more about what played into the decision making to do that and why you don't think everyone is following suit.
Yeah.
Listen, we're not, and I'll answer your question by just answering about our portfolio. Like, you can see clearly we're not a 1 state, pony or 2 state pony here, right? Like, if you're dependent on 1 or 2 states, it's a little bit troublesome because, the market generally will catch up to you. And I would say, I think we did catch the market off guard, but again, we have nothing to hide. There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs, and we want people to understand that we're not trying to massage the overall portfolio to cover up for 1 state versus the other. So I think people don't want to necessarily show how heavily weighted they are and maybe just a few states, but again, that's more of a question for them. But I'll say we're very happy to put this initial transparency out there. If I have my say, we will continue to push the envelope for more, because when you're dealing with the sell side, it's I'm not saying they don't put a thorough model together, but when you're putting like absolute dollars behind a buy side model, your numbers need to be buttoned up and they need to have faith in what you're putting out there. And so we kind of gave sticky notes back in 2018 and wrote crayon on these sticky notes, and now we're real companies now. So that's what it is. I mean, you want to accelerate that evaluation period and get the compliance departments comfortable and the whole investment strategy.
Good stuff. Could we see you at the Benzinga conference with like a black T-shirt and just transparency written across?
I love it. Yeah, it's hashtag transparency. Maybe we'll get a trend going here. So
good stuff. Listen, thanks for checking in. Before we let you go, we want to bring somebody in that wants to say hi. It's actually segment number 3. It's MSO's Monday with Mr. Dan Ahrens. Mitch, let's bring him in. And good day, sir. Good to see you. Dan, meet Aaron. Aaron, meet Dan.
Hi there. My
Hello,
name's Dan.
I should do the. We'll go through the whole introductions again. Nice to see you, Dan. I love the
Good to
Maryland
see
trip
you.
too. I didn't even
I
mention
know, yeah.
Maryland. How well
This
we've
is,
been doing there. So.
This is AdvisorShares swag that we did for the adult use rollout in Maryland. But
Love it.
yeah.
That was
Dan,
a
do you run an
2.5 time
ETF
trip.
or something?
Yeah.
Wait, what? What's that?
I said, do you run an ETF or something we should know about?
A little bit. Verano is a strong number 4 holding in MSOs right now. So a
13.3% to be exact is for the latest numbers. But so
big
like
number.
a lot of people that are on here don't get a chance to go down to say some of the MJ Biz or Benzenga conferences. But, I'm assuming that you guys have, been in touch and have spoken, have known each other for a number of years. But when did you guys first meet?
That's an excellent question. I don't
You
know.
like that?
2 years ago,
I
3 years
twilighted-
ago.
Yeah, I'll try to answer this, Dan. I think because I twilighted at Cresco too, and I'm guessing Dan and I might have crossed paths there. But very early on, I would say of the go public, we obviously missed the initial mark of the MSOS ETF. I guess the infancy stages because we went public in February of 21, and then we had to get listed, quoted on the OTC. So I think Dan and I had some conversations, just around the company and kind of where we were at in the process. But obviously, Dan, you've always been a known commodity to us, and we've always appreciated the support. And would love a 23, but we'll take 13 for now. That's it. I joke. I know there's a process to it, but no. I mean, you think about where we were at. I mean, to go from zero and to get to where we're at, we very much appreciate that. But we take nothing for granted, and we keep working quarter after quarter to try to put up the numbers.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, to you other guys, you should. I've sat down in the Verano office up in Chicago. You guys should visit there if you have not. They'd probably give you some Verano swag if you did that.
Verano swag.
I need some move swag from the Florida locations.
Consider it done, Anthony. And Dan, we have a new office, so we actually, it was so funny. People are gonna have to start sitting on each other's laps. So we got a new actual, like I feel like we're an actual corporation now. So if you're ever back in Chicago, new digs.
I'll have to get in there. Well,
Chicago it is. Says I think we were actually talking last week. I forget who the company we were speaking to, Anthony, but we actually are making a trip to Chicago in May. So we'll have to knock on the door and come see when we're there. But yeah.
Let's do. We have a media room. We should do a little something from our office. On site. I love it. So
do it live. Do it.
I want a video of you guys trying guap gummies.
Yeah, but maybe I'll get shirts and I'll get you some.
Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it. It's fine. We're fine.
Good stuff. Aaron, appreciate it. Let's keep in touch, and hopefully we see you next month down in Florida at the Benzenga conference.
I will be there. Good to see everybody. Dan, good luck with the questions here, but great to see you.
They'll be nice.
Thank you, sir.
Good to see you.
Be nice. All right. Later, guys.
Talk soon.
Good to see you, sir. Happy Monday. How are things?
Good. Well, for a red day again, that's a little frustrating, but I take them as they come. I may have been buying some dips today. I can't say if I actually was, but that'll come out later tonight if I.
Yeah,
I got a feeling what one of those names were, but I will let the numbers do the talking later in the tape.
Yes, we don't even want to get in the gray area of what we're allowed to talk about, not allowed to talk about.
No.
I will say, like, we continue to pound this message week in and week out. It's just these catalyst moments that we are even talking about with Aaron, but all is well. I know, yes, it's a slow news day. We're seeing red. We had Dan the chart man here on Friday, and he was just saying, look, we need news. But when you just put things into perspective, like we said, all these catalyst moments, like, again, you can't make this stuff up. These are all big pending announcements, and it's not just one thing, right?
Definitely. It's there's been some nice research put out there of here's all your state catalysts, here's all your federal catalysts, here's all your company level catalysts.
Yeah.
And stuff is lining up, but I've said this before, on a day where there's not any real news or even a decent rumor, this stuff's going down because there's only most of the buyers are already invested, and there's only so much additional buying we can do versus crap ass way that most of these stocks trade on a regular day.
Yeah. We can't predict the future, but when we get announcements like we had last week, and let's say rescheduling, and we're like 2-3 years down the road, this trend of like selling and everything going red after announcement, like those days will be long over. And I think in the rearview mirror. Or do you think this is an actual industry that's just sell on the news type environment, regardless of, whether institution gets in or not?
No. Usually there's a point that we can pinpoint after the fact, like on earnings day the other day. I mean, first, GTI knocks it out of the park, and then we follow it up with two more, very solid earnings. But then in the afternoon, there's one particular seller that's dumping something, and it causes contagion, and everything starts rolling down together. Not on really high volume or anything. It's not a real selling event for any of us to worry about.
Yeah.
But does it affect our bottom lines? Yeah, it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan, this is a user generated question. So, I mean, I'm kind of just going to put it out there. We're waiting on a lot of catalysts right now.
Yep.
Schedule 3, safe. None of this is guaranteed. I know that, that. I hope everybody that's participating in the market understands that.
Yeah.
Is there a plan, or what changes in your investment thesis if we don't get any of these catalysts?
What changes in any of my thesis? Well, I'm going to say very little, because I think when you're saying if we don't get any of these catalysts, you mean in the short term, or if we don't actually get the rescheduling or something.
I'll frame it differently. This year, 2024.
And the reason is, in managing the fund, I would stay the course, because if I wasn't already managing the fund like I'm managing the fund, let's say I had a very balanced portfolio. Let's say I had equal weighting in all the different schedule or tier 1s, tier 2s, tier 3s. If we don't see that those federal reform catalysts are coming in this calendar year, I would say you better weight yourself towards the very best balance sheets and the very best high quality operators. But our fund is already very purposely super heavy weighted in the tier 1s. Just like, hey, owning over 13% of the fund in Verano, compared to a regular ETF or regular mutual fund, that's already a super heavy weighting. We just happens to have a little bit heavier weightings in GTI and Curaleaf and Trueleaf. So my main thesis is stay the course, and the reason is, we've been whining and crying about politicians and federal bureaucrats for the last couple of years, have we all not? All the memes with Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown and all that kind of stuff. And we're sitting here in 2024, and do you know what we're doing? We're still waiting on bureaucrats and politicians and all the stuff they say over what is in reality. Stay the course, because I am still very confident, no matter who's in the White House next year, no matter what the control of Congress is next year. That the train has left the station for cannabis. Additional states still coming online. Additional medical states still turning to rec. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, employing hundreds of thousands of Americans. It ain't turning back unless.
Well, Guap highlighted that.
We don't know when the dates are, but there's no turning it back.
And I agree with you completely. I just wanted to ask the question to hear your answer, because I thoroughly agree with you, and it resonates in the construction of the fund right now. I mean, the companies that are the heaviest weighted, everyone do their own research, but I'd be willing to bet that they could withstand and grow without reform, as it sits today.
Correct.
In terms of balance sheet and growth.
And always learn a rule in broadcasting. If there's a question you don't want to answer or ask, you just use that it was user generated before you actually get into the actual.
Oh, it was user generated. I'll pull up the. I'm gonna have to pull up the tweet now. So
I believe you. But to your point
You
earlier,
can ask me anything, and I'm not going to say.
Yeah,
"Damn it,
I have a
Anthony."
user-generated question.
do you? Go
Fire
ahead.
away, Guap.
No, I'm kidding. It's more asking about the whole Trojan horse thing. Can you explain to our audience why potentially an individual investor or an institution could not invest in an OTC stock, but could invest in MSOS? Do you have firsthand knowledge of any real life examples of that, or is it just
yeah.
Oh God, yes, that's easy. It's
Okay.
all it's depends on who your broker dealer is, or your bank is, or your investment advisor is, because Curaleaf, GTI. Well, actually, I should separate those two because Curaleaf is now on the list on the TSX.
Right.
But so when they listed on the TSX, it still took a month, even 2 months, depending on various brokerage firms, to unblock Curaleaf from trading and custody. Yet it is still blocked and unavailable through large amounts of brokers, wirehouses, and banks. It has more availability than GTI does. It has more availability than Verano does. It has more availability than Cresco does, because TerraSyn and Curaleaf are on the TSX, but they're still blocked lots of places.
Yeah.
All of those U.S. multi-state operators or single-state operators that touch the plant in the United States are completely unavailable and or blocked from trading at dozens, if not hundreds, of broker-dealers and banks. A great example, the fund MSOS is officially blocked at Merrill Lynch, and
Really?
the authorized participant Merrill Pro, B of A, those are authorized participants in the fund, and they have it officially blocked. Yet there's tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions, in custody at Merrill of MSOS. Now,
So why do they have it blocked?
blocked?
I begs the question. Why do they have it blocked then?
Because it's they just throw it into their cannabis bucket, which is very unfair.
So
But
does that mean that there's different? Does that mean that there's different internal procedures for like trading stock, holding stock, or like what you can actually own?
there are,
Like,
and there's different levels of customer at Merrill. There's
Okay.
certain customers and certain advisors at Merrill that, I'll be blunt, say they can do whatever the hell they want,
Yep.
okay,
because they are big.
Yep.
Your average customer can't buy GTI or even Curaleaf, and they can't even buy MSOS, which is freaking ridiculous. But to come back to Guap's question, there are lots of places that have these OTC traded in the U.S. plant touching companies blocked, but they allow the fund MSOS because MSOS is New York Stock Exchange listed and fully approved by everyone ETF. But just going to the hypocrisy of everything we deal with in this industry, yeah, it's even the fund is blocked some places, but it's blocked a whole lot less places than the individual stocks.
okay. Then maybe you can answer this, Dan, because I actually stumped the people at Charles Schwab the other week. So TerraSend,
Yeah.
TerraSend uplisted. TerraSend, it should be more easily available. I can buy and trade TerraSend in my account.
Yep.
But they won't accept the DRS for
What's
stock
DRS?
that a depository statement for stock that I purchased in like a private deal. That's being held at the transfer agent right now. They won't allow me to deposit that, but they'll let me go open market buy the stock.
And
I
it's
asked
nothing.
the guy on the phone. I was like, "So how does this make any sense?" He was like, "I don't have anything to tell you," and I couldn't figure it out for the life of me.
And it wasn't. Was it because it was cannabis, or they just didn't want to take certificates?
He's telling me on the phone that it's on their banned list, and I'm like, dude, the stock's in my account. I'm buying shares of it while I'm on the phone with him, just to use it as an example. And I'm like, but you're telling me this is on the ban list? I was like, make this make sense. It made zero sense.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's because it's private stock cert on a U.S. plant touching company, as compared to a Canadian listed company that happens to trade OTC in the U.S. that's already listed. But yeah, no, that's a weird little phenomena you got going there, because Schwab, Fidelity, places like that, they're generally available for trading, as is our fund.
But I got screwed though, because I called them to ask if they would take the DRS when it was TD Ameritrade, and they said it would. And then I had to get an opinion letter. And by the time I got the opinion letter, the acquisition went through and my account rolled to Schwab. And now they're like, no, sorry.
It just seems like there's so much broken communication amongst these corporations as to who sees what, even in your own specific company. And you even see that even from the government level too, right?
Well, lots of people kept asking about Curaleaf. Curaleaf got listed on the TSX. Back when we were getting our funds first approved for setup at Bank of New York Mellon, they're our custody bank for all AdvisorShares ETFs. We do a lot of things that aren't even cannabis. And man, that conversation went into a black hole, and it took me an entire 2 months. Camilo over at Curaleaf was sending me, backup presentations and PowerPoints and PDFs, and I'm sending those to the people at Bank of New York, trying to educate them up. And then finally they removed it from their restricted list at Bank of New York Mellon, which is a good thing. But tons of communication and education, and a full 2 months. And it's Anthony's story is very telling, because the left hand of Schwab doesn't know what the right hand of Schwab is doing.
Yeah, you're right. Man, you could write a book about this in the early days of cannabis. This is the TDR Traded Black podcast. Quick reminder for everybody out there, make sure to like this video. Again, I'll say it, YouTube and their algorithms, they like likes and they like comments. So if you can, leave some comments below. We want to make this go viral as well. Fire away any questions that you have for Dan here today. I have one question, actually. It's from Alex Solstice, who writes, ask Dan about YOLO outperforming MSOs lately. You want to care to elaborate on that, and how LPs are positioned with larger Germany exposure and Canadian tax reform? Do you agree or disagree with that? But anyways, I'd like to get your take on that.
Well, YOLO was the predecessor to MSOS. And for people that don't know, YOLO needs more love. Everybody should look at YOLO. It's a very good fund. It is a global strategy. It has almost about half of its assets invested in MSOS for the U.S. exposure, and we waived the fees on that. We're not double dipping or anything. But in the past month, or the month of February, actually, Cardiol Therapeutics. Does anybody know?
That's a good name.
It went up 72% last month.
Was that the one that you mentioned about 2-3 weeks ago?
Cardiol's got a CBD. They've got a CBD therapeutic for myocarditis.
Oh yeah, they're based out of Western Canada, right?
Yeah. Tiny company. Yeah. But it's in the top 5 holdings.
They were up 72% for the month.
Yeah, February.
Wow.
So if YOLO outperformed by losing less, remember February was largely a negative month, people. Now, we love the hell out of YOLO. We think everybody should look at the holdings on our website of YOLO. It's a different animal than MSOS. But no, don't get caught up in short-term performance, because MSOS and the 2X version MSOX were up a ton in January and are still up year to date really nicely, and pulled back in February as we're waiting on all of our crap from government that we've discussed.
So, I mean, that was one thing. People were talking price action, and people are fixated on the price action. And there's anything I'm thinking to myself, if you go back to September, you could line up all the cannabis names and start throwing darts, and they're up 100%, 200%, 300%. Like they're seeing a little bit of decay, but those gains are still there. I'm going to ask a question that you might laugh at, Dan, but I kind of want to get this dispelled because people ask it all the time.
Seriously.
Will and I know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Will MSOS ever pay out a dividend to shareholders?
Ever? Oh, I can't say ever, but.
Or can ETFs? Can ETFs pay out dividends?
Oh, yeah. ETFs pay dividends. Just a few short years ago, the cannabis ETFs were paying out dividends
Okay.
because they were earning so much income from securities lending.
Gotcha.
I think that fund MJ that I don't really like to talk about, it was paying regular quarterly dividends, and people were like, "Oh, it's free money." No, it's not free money. They were doing a lot of sec lending. The income, a 1940 Act fund in the U.S., whether it's a mutual fund or ETF, if they have income, they have to pay it out. They have to pay out income distributions, and if a fund pays out $1 dividend, the NAV drops by $1 that day.
Yeah.
Nobody should think this is free money. So in the future,
that's important to know.
Could we from sec lending income or dividends? But remember, these are a bunch of micro cap, small cap stocks that are putting money back into the business. They're not looking to be dividend payers.
Yeah.
No. So if you started to hold some of the REITs in the space or the finance companies and they paid dividends, I would be willing to say it's in my best interest that you're actually reinvesting that capital, not distributing to it and dropping the NAV to an extent.
But the NAV or the fund itself, by law and by rule, has to pay out income that's in excess of expenses.
Okay.
So YOLO has paid out some quarterly distributions from time to time.
Okay.
And it's not a choice I can make. It's, if it has more income than expenses, it has to distribute those out to shareholders.
Huh.
Okay.
Well, you won't know unless you ask, but good question to say the least. This has been good. I'd love to stay on more, but we're at the 45-minute mark, but this has been great. I love these Monday chats with you, but we're learning more and more. But I really do think that, Guap, Anthony, you guys had some great questions today. And I think some of our user base as well had some great questions as well. But I think, drum it down, ask questions as if you're a dummy and you just want it self-explanatory. But I think it's helpful that we're learning over these past, 4 or 6 weeks on some of the stuff that you're sharing and how it works, but always some great takeaways. And I think that's pretty much it. I won't ask any more user-friendly questions.
User-generated questions.
I was surprised about the dividend answer. I was not expecting that.
No, I thought that ETFs, I for some reason thought ETFs didn't pay dividends, but that's interesting to know.
Yeah.
Well, ETFs are generally more tax efficient than your typical mutual fund. Okay. So very often, by the way we trade an ETF internally, we can avoid paying out those gains because once again, people, it ain't free money. You got to run your taxes at the end of the year. But yes, I know a little bit about the way ETFs work.
All right.
So ask me anything.
I would hope. All right, my friend. Good seeing you. And let's look forward to seeing you next Monday again. Okay.
You too. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Dan. You guys were good today. Those were some great questions. But I think as you walk through a lot of that stuff, if you're learning stuff, then obviously our audiences as well. And if there's any questions that you guys want us to get back to Dan with before next Monday, let us know. Leave comments below. As I said before, smash that like button as we continue to grow this community. Great show, gents. In the meantime, we got a busy schedule again this week. We're coming back on Wednesday for the live stream. We'll have Dan the Chartman on again on Friday. And then we're going to do a special podcast again this Thursday, knowing that Cureleaf and is there anybody else? I don't have it in front of me.
MariMed, but I think we'll focus
on
Cureleaf
as well.
Oh, yeah. MariMed, we'll be covering MariMed's earnings as well.
We like MariMed. That's for sure. Yeah. All right, gents, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch back up with you on Wednesday.
Talk soon, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would